Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. Guo Chuan, the famous Chinese sailor, has gone missing off Hawaii during an attempted solo voyage across the Pacific Ocean. He was originally scheduled to arrive in Shanghai during the first week of November. The U.S. Coast Guard has now suspended its search, but Guo's team continues to scour the ocean, hoping to find the missing sailor. To discuss the ongoing situation, I'm joined in the studio by Dong Jun, co-founder of Ever Beijing Limited, and Wang Chaoyong, the chairman and CEO of China Equity Group, who is also founder and chairman of the 32nd through 35th America's Cup China Yacht Racing Team, and personally acquainted with Guo. But before we begin our discussion, let's take a look at this.
On October 25th, the 51-year-old Chinese sailor Guo Chuan went missing in the Pacific Ocean. Guo, who set sail from San Francisco on October 18th, was aiming to complete his trans-Pacific journey to Shanghai in 18 days and hoping to set a new world record for a solo crossing. Guo was last heard from just after 3 p.m. last Tuesday Beijing time, when his trimaran had sailed 900 nautical miles to the west of Hawaii. 24 hours after his team lost contact with Guo, the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center China, in cooperation with the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles, contacted the U.S. Coast Guard in Hawaii for help with search and rescue. However, on October 30th, the U.S. Coast Guard stopped its search for Guo after finding his boat off the Hawaiian Islands. There was no sign of Guo, and his life jacket was aboard. More than 1,000 ships affiliated with China's COSCO Shipping Corporation were informed to keep an eye out along their travel routes in the hope that they would spot the missing sailor. On October 29th, Guo's wife, Xiao Li, launched a crowdfunding project to help in the search.
Guo is a very cautious person. He wouldn't do anything without good reason or preparation. So I'm convinced that he had a life jacket on while sailing his trimaran. As a professional sailor, he would have been used to wearing it, like a driver who always fastens their seatbelt while driving.
Guo Chuan is a professional sailor in China and holds 2 world records for sailing. On April 5th, 2013, he became the first Chinese to complete a solo circumnavigation of the globe. On September 16, 2015, he and his crew completed a non-stop voyage through the Arctic Ocean's Northeast Passage in a racing trimaran, setting a new world record. For his achievement, Guo received the Achievement of the Year award by Yachts and Yachting magazine in 2016.
Welcome to our discussion here. This man deserves respect. He commands absolute respect for his bravery. But the question at the moment, Mr. Wang and Mr. Dong, is a man who holds 2 world records for sailing went missing, and the U.S. Coast Guard has suspended its search and rescue efforts. What could have happened to him, Mr. Wang?
Well, it's definitely a tragedy. It's a very shocking news to all of us, especially as a personal friend whom I have met 12 years ago in Qingdao. I'm guessing that he might have been knocked out to the water without a life jacket.
A lot of uncertainty, of course, lingers, with more questions being asked as to whether the team should have suspended its efforts. What do you think of what would happen next, Dong Jun?
I think from China's sports community to many other walks of life, we should, by after more days, if we still unfortunately cannot find him, and I think this deserves a discussion about whether more people should be encouraged into the sport of sailing or the adventurous practice or exercise or even career like him, or we should suspend it because, as called for by some people on the internet, I've been following this. It's been very heated debate and controversy about whether the sport or what he did during his his lifetime over the last decade, whether it was worthwhile, and how do you interpret his action with your the relationship with the family or family value in China based on the traditional cultural values. Yeah, it's really worth discussion. Yeah,
Dongjun, Paul, you have raised more questions than I'm prepared to ask about the adventure of sailing. But Mr. Wang, can you brief us on the history of Chinese maritime sailing in present-day China? Not many of our viewers are familiar with what is going on and what happened. You have been involved deeply in this game or adventure to a large degree. What can you tell us about the thrills and achievements that you have got?
Well, as you know, China has a long history of ocean sailing. More than 600 years ago, Admiral Zheng He led legendary China voyage, actually 7 of them. That set the record for Chinese ancient sailing achievement. But in the recent history, China is a very weak nation on the ocean sailing. About 12 years ago, I started to found the first China team in the America's Cup, which has a history more than 160 years. And after that, we have seen China Cup being founded in Shenzhen, and the Guo Chuan, whom I met 2005 in Qingdao, who started a solo voyage on behalf of the city of Qingdao to promote Olympic sailing project. In the past decade, we have seen great increase of Chinese maritime activities as a sport. But compared to Europe and North America, we are still way behind, especially compared to New Zealand, Australia. They are very, very strong in ocean sailing, and sailing becomes very competitive sports.
Both of you are 51 years old. You sure share a lot of similarities in the pursuit of bravery or the pleasures of the sport itself. Now, tell me, Chao Yong, how dangerous is the game? You categorically fall into 2 different fields of competition. Yours is very close to the shore, but he's offshore. But how dangerous are the 2 games?
Well, all kinds of, almost every sports has its dangerousness. Ocean sailing is definitely very, very dangerous, like climbing of Mount Everest, because the uncontrolled weather condition, it could happen when life could be lost. But people with mindset and a spirit of exploration and challenge to the nature, they are not afraid of life danger. They would like to challenge themselves, challenge the nature, challenge to prove that human can achieve global sailing.
I'm afraid the implications of the concept adventure is different one from another if you draw a comparison with what happened centuries ago in ocean sailing, when you didn't have any help from the high technology, science, for example. Today we have satellites, we have telecommunication to build up the bridge between you and the support team on the land. So do you think the spirit of adventure has very much been enhanced as a result of the pervasive use of high technology, so that the very sense of confidence, if not complacency, I'm sorry for using this word, for Mr. Guo Chuan, may have prompted him to take yet another adventure? But this time around, it's a tragedy, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think technology has really made, not only advanced people's courage and confidence of embarking on such adventures, but also is actually making the globe or our Earth smaller and smaller. is absolutely centuries ago, back in the old times when we still had, from the entire humankind, from Asia, from Europe, such brave sailors. But now, as technology has made it possible for more people like Guo Chuan, no matter what this short-term discussion about his disappearance, about his missing, really lead the Chinese internet community. But I think we have the confidence that more people will have the facilities, experience, knowledge to go, overseas, take over, his role of sailing across the Pacific, across the Atlantic, and even around the globe.
Next question, what kind of technical support would he or his team enjoy from the supporting team? For example, he's the holder of 2 world records for what is called the circumnavigation of the globe, which is very different from yours. Tell us briefly the technical support.
Well, first of all, the kind of sailing boat is very reliable, made of new material, and satellite telephone and internet connection through satellite connection, GPS, and life jacket, and purification, seawater desalination technology are all part of the safety of the voyage.
So water supply is no problem for sailors?
Normally with modern technology, with an onshore supporting team, navigation maps, with accurate maritime maps, the danger of life loss on ocean sailing has become less and less. So for Mr. Guo Chuan, what has happened this time, I guess it's more an incident than
you mean it's more like an accident?
Accident.
Very dangerous accident. In fact, the last taped conversation that he had with his continental support team was he narrowly escaped from a storm that was caused by the sudden gathering of clouds and the gales that were generated by the dramatic gathering of the clouds. What do you think of, say, the sustainability of this kind of a game with the development of high technology? And Cao Yong briefed us about the decrease in the dangers.
Well, I think I am basically more optimistic than pessimistic about the prospect and future after Guo Chuan's accident this time around. I think more people would likely to follow what he does, what he has been doing, because of the general trend. And also, back to this incident or accident, I think we still don't have enough ground to speculate or guess what exactly happened. We can only trust that he was such a very well educated educated person, and with his rationale, and he has experience, and he was well trained. But on the spur of the moment, did he really try to take chances? We don't know. We just assume that he took all the steps he was trained to be good at, but something still beyond his capability might happen. But that will only serve as good lessons and experience to people of younger generation to learn from this and try what he hasn't achieved or
he is, of course,
yet.
a brilliant example of bravery and inspiration. So let's look at this picture. This broad picture, he looks a lot younger. Now, how is it like to have this strong sense of loneliness and desperation in the middle of nowhere? It's a vast ocean, and of course, this is very close to the shore, but I mean, imagine, presumably, he's in the middle of nowhere, and do you think psychologically he or she got to go through courses of training, hours of training?
Yes, the psychological challenge is the core competence.
You have different kinds of adversity concerning the circumstances under which you have to survive.
That's right.
It's not just a sense of bravery, isn't it?
So that's why around the globe we have seen a few dozen people who could complete the global voyage. 5 years ago, there was Alan MacArthur from England. 4 years ago, there was Jessica Watson from Australia, who was only 14 years old, who finished global sailing solo. So those people served as good role model for young generation, for women, for men who would like to take the challenge.
Right.
So I think Mr. Guo Chuan serves as a very good role model for the Chinese sailors. Among the whole China, 1.3 billion people, only 2 or 3 people have had the accomplishment of global.
So accomplished.
Accidentally, on the same day when Guo Chuan was reportedly missing, an Italian sailor whose last name was Mura actually started from Gibraltar to take on this global solo voyage with a target to beat his record within 21 days. Yeah.
This is indeed a game for the brave people. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Wang Chaoyong and Mr. Dong Jin. We're discussing uncertainty facing the missing and perhaps the loss of Mr. Guo Chuan, the most famous and respectable Chinese ocean sailing soldier, perhaps. He's a hero, of course. We'll come back to discuss the spirit of adventure, something that is missing from our country for centuries. When we come back, stay with us. Welcome back. With the rise of living standards for average Chinese, do you think this game is likely to continue? I raise this question in the context of what happened to one of the most famous property developers, Wang Shi, who conquered Mount Everest twice. People who know the game clearly said, look, it's a matter of money. It's a lot of money. For example, if you could afford to spend 1 million, you could hire very experienced tourist guide or guide for the adventures of conquering Zhumalangma mountain. And then you would precisely forecast the weather conditions to avoid the pitfalls and dangers. So do you think money, the fundraising, would eventually lay the groundwork for playing the game safe?
Well, funding is definitely very important for all kinds of sports, including this extreme mountain climbing and ocean sailing. But as a challenger, you always could face extreme condition, incidental condition, so there's no absolute safety.
And do you think, are you saying clearly that family members of those who are involved in the game for the brave are well prepared for uncertainty? Anything could have happened or could happen. Is that your point?
Yes.
And in that context, do you believe that Mr. Guo Chuan must have written the will for the family? And can you tell us a story about right after he came back home, after an adventure, did he really realize clearly, and did he know clearly what he had gone through?
I think a couple of years ago when he was back successfully from his journey into the set a record in the Arctic Ocean voyage, and when he came back, he couldn't wait to rush on shore and nail down in front of his wife and the 2 children. And he burst into tears, and it was a very emotional moment, photographed by reporters on the spot. And we can imagine that represented the mixed feelings that he has such a love affair with the sea, but at the same time he is also a family man. He has to strike a balance between staying with the family as much as he can, but at the same time to pursue his dream of sailing around the globe.
Right, well, we all have families. We all have family responsibilities. And those brave sailors for ocean going know clearly what it means to undertake the adventures. So, do you understand clearly the mixed feelings that have obsessed those brave sailors?
Yes, it's a hard choice. On one hand is your family, on the other hand is your spirit challenge, which attracts you, excites you, which you couldn't refuse.
Look, let's put yourself in the shoes of Mr. Guo Chuan, or similarly, other guys who are willing and ready to risk their lives and undertake the adventures. What would you tell your children? Now, if they ask you, Daddy, how dangerous is the game? Do you want me to be involved in the game? What would be your most likely response?
Well, I will tell my children that the meaning of what I'm going to do, the danger, the possibility I could face, to prepare them.
And do you see clearly the sense of fulfillment for being an
Well, I'm not
adventurous
sure about our
game?
generation, encouraging or, allowing our children to take on such dangerous sport or, adventures.
You would give a second thought to this idea.
But I can imagine that the younger generation, when they are grown-ups, when they are adults, when they face this, when they are told by their own children that they want to take on something adventurous or even dangerous, they will be more open. When you look at those young graduates of colleges in China, more and more people tend to be startup entrepreneurs. It's similar spirit instead of settling on a very secure job.
Right, trekking through the desert might be yet another dangerous game, but of course those guys enjoy more technical support. China is fast becoming a maritime power instead of being confined to the continental confines. And therefore, with the improvement of our income capabilities, do you think more university students, graduates, young people, like their pursuit of entrepreneurship, will be involved in the games? And what do you think of things that may motivate them further in this direction? Dongjun.
Well, I think we can expect that from the sport, which is closer to the coast, like America's Cup style sailing, supported by Mr. Wang, to attract more people first, before some of them turn to solo sailing around the globe. Because I really believe on China's own Olympic agenda, there are still some water sport, like sailing, like boating, that will encourage people who are traditionally, among Chinese, more traditionally, settled down inland. I think the sport or Olympic national agenda will attract more people to go a little bit offshore.
Well, I'm wondering why the Olympic Games, or IOC, has failed to encourage people to challenge or be involved in extreme sports. Extreme sports is more like entertainment activities. For me, a television viewer, most of the time I would be watching people involved in this game, but I don't think it will be part of the Olympic movement.
So far, the fixed format is, the Olympics have to be held in one particular city. And most of the extreme sports should go deep into the wilderness, far from cities. That will make it difficult.
Why? What do you think of the popularity of, for example, adrenaline junkies, or in other words, what's your philosophical perception of the extreme sport?
Well, it's a character building. It attracts certain kind of people with adventure spirit. I encourage them to undertake extreme sport, but I also encourage them to be well trained, well prepared, to calculate the risk.
Calculated risks with measured steps. What do you think of his suggestion?
I think, yeah, I absolutely agree, because China is already relatively backward. Is learning from advanced nations or teams or individuals. I think we have so much to catch up with, and also at the same time so much experience, technology, know-how, to learn from. And that will make it absolutely possible because you don't have to worry going up so ahead of the world, but you can do the catch-up game first. And you have so much reliable expertise that you can learn from. You should feel pretty safe. Compare those with those who, who made the trailblazing efforts centuries ago.
Let's go back to the discussion here. Mr. Guo Chuan set sail on October the 18th from San Francisco. He planned to finish the journey in 18 days since he went missing. And the support team vowed to honor his commitment to finish the journey. And what would happen next? Since they have brought back, the Coast Guard of the United States have brought back the trimarine, and the members of the support team vowed to continue with what he has left behind. What's your guess? What's your hunch?
Well, the chance of finding him alive is getting smaller and smaller because it's over 7 days. If he doesn't have fresh water on the ocean, 7 days probably is the extreme limit. But I could understand why his support team are using the commercial way of continuing search of Mr. Guo Chuan, because we never give up when we still have chance.
Well said. We never give up when we still have the chance. What's your take?
Well, talking about the future, I look forward to, and also I'm more optimistic about, when we guess about the reaction from the younger generation, whether they would be frightened by this tragedy or it's kind of inspiration for them to follow his suit. It would be very interesting to see what happens next. Maybe it would discourage some middle-aged wives about their husbands attempt to do such adventures. But for the younger generation, yeah, we will see, because China is becoming such a more open country, and the younger generation are more like their Western peers of more adventurers into the future.
Thank you very much. We have been held hostage by the very feeling of being safe for years. That's pretty human. But the issue is that, don't you think it is meaningful to discuss stories like Guo Chuan for a country that has not been able to boast of bravery since the years of Zhenghe adventure 600 years ago? I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.